Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. My guest is Mark Abels. He owns Abels Landscapes in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a 48-year-old business that his dad started, and he bought it 7 years ago. He's been running it for 5. This guy's a smart guy. He's put a lot in place over his short amount of time, bringing his fresh blood into the business. He talks about a book called Dream Manager, which I had many of my peer group clients read, and he actually implemented this concept in a very interesting way into his business, which you will hear all about. He has a position called the Dream Manager in his business, someone who works with all of his employees to help them figure out their personal dreams and how the business and what they can do at work to help meet and achieve those dreams. There's a lot of detail in here you're going to learn about. Very, very interesting. He runs a faith-based business, not in your face, but definitely underpinning the entire business. And he talks about that. He has belonged to a peer group, a faith-based peer group for business owners in his area. And he talks about how that helped him to grow his ideas and his business. We speak a lot about peer groups because, of course, I run the Leader's Edge peer group as well with a lot of landscape, or all landscape companies in my peer groups, but his was very helpful to him. This person, this dream manager he hired, he calls him a life coach, a DMV coach, a recruiter, and a career developer. Really interesting approach. He talks about some of his other benefits, his twice-a-year profit sharing, the unique benefits. I'll let you listen to what you hear him. I'll let him say it in his own words, some of the unique benefits. We end off with some predictions on where his business is going in the next 7 years, where demand is going, where Charleston is going. Very interesting at the very end here. We had a joke that people either golf in Charleston or they surf. He's a surfer. And you hear a little bit about that as well. So with no further ado, here we go. Mark, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm glad to be with you.
I'm really excited to have you on here. You have a great story.
Appreciate it.
Let's jump right in.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about your business, like a couple-minute introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mark Abels. I'm the owner of Abels Landscapes here in Charleston, South Carolina. The second generation owner. So my dad started the company in 1975 and started out as a retail nursery, just kind of a small nursery locally. And through that began to add on some of the maintenance services and small installation services. And so all three components kind of began to grow together. And it was probably 15 to 17 years into it that they actually started building a Lowe's and a Home Depot pretty close to where his nursery was. And he kind of saw the writing on the wall that it was about to get a lot more competition. So he said, I'm just going to shut down the retail side and focus on the install and the maintenance work. And so that's what he did. And in hindsight, I can see how hard of a decision that would have been, but it was really the right one. So he shut that down, focused on the other two components, and really from there on out, just kind of began to grow those. He began working with some really good landscape architects in town, and the installs began to grow in size and complexity, and those often turned into maintenance. So they kind of grew together. We had a woman named Missy Mosney who really started watering the greenhouse in high school, fell in love with the plant world. And so she went to Hort School and to Clemson, came back and helped grow the maintenance. She was with us for over 20 years before she moved out of town. So she kind of grew the maintenance side. My dad grew the install side. And I came out of school 20 years ago. I was the classic kid who kind of grew up in the industry, working summers in high school and college. And so I was around it my whole life. And in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I always knew the business was an opportunity. My dad was really good about not pressuring me to come into the family business, but let me know it was there as an opportunity. And so I just kind of spent the first couple of years just enjoying college and trying to figure it out. So I majored in business, minored in horticulture, And really one of my professors just kind of pulled me aside one day and was like, I'm not sure you understand what a good opportunity it is to go into an established business where you've got like ownership potential kind of already built in.
Mm,
And
smart
so
guy.
that kind of woke me up a little bit. And so that's what I did. Graduated in May, started working right away. So I met my wife in college. So we graduated in May, got married in June. So this year is a big one for us. It'll be our 20th anniversary. It's also 20 years of kind of being full-time here at Abel's Landscapes. So I came to work, kind of began as a foreman on a kind of a small crew, and just did that for years, really, and learning the ins and outs of it before beginning to take things off my dad's plate. And so we had a really good transition plan. And I guess 7 years ago, I officially bought the business from him. He began to slow down even further at that point, and so he worked 2 more years. So 5 years ago, he fully retired, and it's just been me ever since. Thankfully, that coincided with really good economy here in Charleston. So
Yeah.
it's just my job not to screw it up.
Do you know Lee Townsend he went to Clemson?
That name is familiar. I don't know him.
He's a
personally.
client of mine, been in a peer group of mine for years. Him and his dad. He's all just like you, second generation. J.W. Townsend in Charlottesville.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know him. Is that in Virginia, Charleston,
Yeah.
Virginia?
Yeah, I know it's like a silly question. Hey, do you know this person who went
Yeah,
to?
right. Well, the Hort School is fairly small at Clemson, so if he was in my class, I'd probably recognize him for sure.
Yeah. Oh no, of course. Yeah. And so, Abe, tell us a bit about the size of the business now.
Yeah, sure. So we've currently we're about 55 employees, and we did right at 6.8 million last year. 40% of that we're right about 40% maintenance and 60% design build. So our niche is high-end residential. That's pretty much what we do 99% of the time. And so Charleston has a lot of that, which has worked out well for us. So 10 of those employees have been H2B employees for the last 6 years or so, and the rest are full-time.
And so I looked on your website. Gorgeous work. Are you guys designing that, or is that outside of LA's?
It's a mix. I appreciate that. So we do we try to be kind of working on the best projects in town, and we've got a really good relationship with a few landscape architects. One is Warder Klein, who's probably the biggest name in town right now, and do a ton of work with them. They're just a great partner with us. But we also have our own landscape architect in-house, and so we it's probably 50-50 what we install of our own versus other landscape architects.
Are they jealous at all? Like, is there any issue going on?
It's interesting. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, really, because we really try to do everything outside the house. We're kind of like a general contractor, so we'll either our crews will do it, or we've got our own little stable of subs. So we're taking on everything that they can dream up, from might be the E-Pay boardwalk to a ton of masonry, pool decks, and the planning, irrigation, grading, really everything they can think of, we can do. So it works out well. And one of the architects at the Warder Klein firm actually used to work for us before he went to them. So it is a really interesting relationship, but it works well for us.
You do a lot with subs, which is normal or pretty normal. Have you thought about taking pools in house?
We've debated things like that. There's a lot of things we've debated bringing in house. Masonry. We do. I mean, it was probably close to $1 million worth of masonry last year, and it's a sub, that he's pretty much our guy, and he does only our work for the most part. We just keep him that busy. And one time, a couple of years ago, we tried to bring that in house, and I just realized, like, it's not just one guy or two guys; it's like a crew of 5 or 6. And if the main guy leaves, then you're kind of stuck. So there's things like that we'd like to, and that's part of the vision. I think we need to bring masonry in house. Pools. I've been around long enough to know that it's a headache of a business. But it does make sense considering how much we do. Everybody wants a pool. Doesn't matter what kind of historic garden we're working on downtown. they all want to pool these days.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I'll be coming to Charleston in a month or two. I'll have to hit you up for
Oh yeah,
where you think we should be going.
that's for sure. We can give you a little garden tour and get you in the right restaurants for sure. Have you ever been to Charleston before?
Oh, years ago. And I
Yeah.
didn't spend a lot of time. I live in New Orleans. And so
Yeah,
Charleston is one of those Spanish sister cities,
that's right.
right? So I'm now that I'm full time in New Orleans, I'll be comparing and contrasting when I go there.
That's right. I think both cities have a lot of great restaurants and that same history. And I'm not sure about New Orleans, but in Charleston, they really value and appreciate gardens. They're just really historic and date back centuries,
So
really.
it's the same in New Orleans. It is. There are so many houses where the front landscape architecture is gorgeous. They're probably only using the same 15 plants over and over and over, but it's stunning.
Yeah.
At least here.
Yeah, that's about the same here. Charleston's kind of in that midpoint of the zones where we can get away with some tropicals, but then freeze like we had around Christmas zapped a lot of those. And there's a lot of things from up north, Naples, and that'll live here, but just not great. So we stick to the same plant palette over and over for the most part.
I'm just going to segue here. One of the books I run a peer group community, have like 130 members across the US and Canada. And it was a few years ago, and it may not have been all my peer groups, but within a bunch of the peer groups, we read the book Dream Manager.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of fanciful, this book. But one of my peer group members definitely implemented it, and you have implemented it. I cannot wait to hear how this is going for you.
Yeah, sure. The Dream Manager is one of those things that it's like once you read it and kind of get into it, you're like, why isn't everybody in America doing this? If you can support it, why aren't you doing it? It just makes sense from it's right for your people. It's the right thing to do, but it also it's good business.
So explain the premise for the audience.
Sure. Okay, so I read this book called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly, probably 3 years ago now, and it's a one of those business parables, which is probably my favorite type of book. And in it, it's basically a janitorial company that has a huge problem with turnover, and they can't fix it. And they're like, why are people leaving? And one of the big reasons is that a lot of people in that company just felt like it was a dead end job. It's just maybe an easy job to get, but then they're out. And so there were some things that just really correlated with the landscape industry, where you've just got a lot of guys coming in and maybe it's their first job or they can't get another job, and then they just don't see it going anywhere. Especially in a small company, it can be hard to elevate. And so their whole point, the whole premise of the book is like, we've got to get people to dream. We've got to teach them how to dream, and then we've got to connect their job today with their dreams for tomorrow. And that does sound a little fanciful, but it really kind of lays it out, and it makes sense. And so in the book, they end up hiring a position they call the Dream Manager. And so we did the same thing. We went out and we hired who we think is our perfect dream manager. Her name is Morgan Behrens, and she speaks fluent Spanish, which is helpful for us. We've got maybe 35% kind of native Spanish speakers, and so she can talk to both groups. And her job really is a life coach for our people. And so she meets with them, every employee, once every month to 6 weeks, and has a dream session. And so usually she'll meet with the crew. It's one-on-one, but she'll go to the job site because they come here in the morning and then they're gone. So she'll go there, she'll take them lunch, which that always kind of gets you an instant in. And she just kind of begins their dream session. And what that looks like is essentially breaking your life down into these different components. And it's you versus you, right? So it's not like Morgan's coming to you with, hey, I want you to do this and this and this. She really puts it on the employee to say, okay, let's dream. Like, what do you want to do? And so that could be really as small as, well, hey, I'd like to take a vacation to Disney World next year, but I can't afford it. I don't know exactly even how to do it. And so she'll get them a game plan and they'll start working on that. To as big as, getting out of massive debt or buying a home. Another thing that's she's become a resident at the DMV. The DMV is just a complicated place for you and me, much less guys who are working every day of the week, don't have time to get there. And so we've got several guys who they don't have a driver's license because maybe they had a fine 20 years ago and it just compounded and compounded, and she'll get to the bottom of it. She'll figure out what they need to do. So she meets with them, has the dream session, and then she comes back and she does the homework for them. So she's basically just an ambassador for them, somebody who's kind of behind the scenes working for them, connecting with them. She is not the complete problem solver, but she will get you to the problem solver. And so through that, we've partnered with another group that it's called Increasing Hope here in Charleston, and they're basically like a financial literacy. It's kind of like a Dave Ramsey for people who don't know who Dave Ramsey is.
Right.
We talk to our guys about budgets, and they're like, "Oh, I've heard the word, but I don't know maybe how to even get started." And so things like that. So financial literacy, and one of the things I told Morgan when we hired her was like, everybody's going to just ask you for a raise, and so like I can't do that to everybody, or we'll go out of business. And so we've got to think creatively. Okay, what does it mean to make more income? How do you elevate? How do you grow? How do you bring more value to the company so we want to pay them fairly and well here. But in order to elevate, they've got to learn. So she can work with them with game plans. So it's professionally, it's physical goals, it might be spiritual, emotional, material things to shape them up for.
Is she an HR career developer, or is she separate from that?
Yeah, she blurs those lines. We've got in the book, they have 400 employees, and they have one dream manager for everybody. We've got 55, and so it takes up probably 70% of her time working on dream manager stuff. But she's turned into a really good recruiter for us. So she works that part of it because she can explain the culture really well.
Yeah.
And you talk to somebody about the dream manager, and every time you mention it, people are like, "Wait, tell me more about that. What is that?" And it kind of is a great little instant hook. And so we found that it's really just created buy-in with our employees. As you can imagine, there are some people who are like, it took over a year for them to start to trust her and to open up. And, that's okay. There's some people who are right away just spilling their guts and help me with this, help me with that. And everything in between. So it's been really cool to see the wins start to come.
She's like a fixer, but doesn't do the fixing, kind of connects people.
That's right. We always say it's you versus you. And one of the big things, even for me, it's like rethinking, it's forcing you to sit down and dream and think. You just get caught up in the whirlwind, and it's like, okay, of course we want to continue to grow, but wait, what do I want to be personally? What do my wife and I, where do we want to go? For example, this is our 20th anniversary, so we're going to go to Italy this September.
Ooh.
But I came up with that goal. It'll be 2 years when we do it, because that's not something we can just go out and do tomorrow. We got to put some money aside to save for it. We've got to kind of plan, and so that was kind of one of the long-term dreams. That it'll be the first time I've taken a 2-week vacation, so that kind of thing. So that's just a good small example of what she does for us.
Where are you going in Italy?
We're still working out. It'll be our first time there, so we want to spend a few days in some of the hot spots, but definitely want to spend some time in Rome. I'm not a huge wine drinker, which I know people get super excited about that, but I am excited about the history and the food. So we want to go there and then kind of work our way up to Venice. We want to Cinque Terre, Venice, and my wife has a few other spots that she wants to hit. But we're doing 2 weeks, so we don't want to spread it too thin.
Nice. My wife and I are planning, or we're dreaming, but I think we're going to do this. Do a 2-week or 10-day bike trip from Venice up around and then down towards old Yugoslavia, Croatia.
Oh man, I've heard those are beautiful as well.
And so that'll be in September. Maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm sure it's a little more terrain than you're used to in New Orleans, though.
Yeah, when you're along the coast, yes. But when you're along the coast, I think it's fairly flat. I'm not really sure, but That's my assumption. Hey, so about the Dream Manager, read the book. In the book, that janitorial company lives happily ever after because everything
That's
works
right.
out great.
Mhm.
And so if that's 100, kind of like perfection, um, what kind of results have you received? Like, where are you on that spectrum of
Yeah.
it works or it doesn't work?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I felt the same thing with the book. At the end of the book, like it feels like everyone's buying a house and it's just they literally have like 200% turnover to 0% turnover or something like that. And it has not been that magical for us. But I would say if you're talking about 0 to 100, we're probably in the 75 range, enough that I would never not do it. And so before, after I read it, I had my wife read it and then our leadership team here read it. And we all agreed we wanted to try it. But at the time, we're a fairly small company. And so it's a position that's just straight overhead, doesn't bring any money in the door. But we believe that it was the right thing to do for our people. Now, in turn, I do think it's good business and that people will just have more buy-in. They're going to.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I kind of want to I always thought it was like kind of interesting, but fanciful, but I like the way you describe the position because some companies, a lot of clients of mine, they want to bring on somebody in charge of culture, which is a interesting idea. What does that person really do?
Mm-hmm.
So your person is sort of helping you drive the culture.
That's right. She's a huge part of our culture. We have a monthly meeting, kind of an all hands meeting. We do it the first Monday of every month. And in that meeting, we celebrate wins. That's one of the big parts of it. So if it's the emails that we get or the phone calls that we get that the employees don't hear, we'll celebrate those. So we do it for the install division, the maintenance division, and then we call culture wins. And Morgan leads that piece. And with their permission, basically, she's just celebrating out loud somebody that has hit one of their goals, their dreams. And so that just gets a little bit contagious. And so people say, hey, I really can do this. And obviously the bigger ones get the most notice, but the small ones as well. And it just slowly begins to change the culture. It has not completely fixed our turnover. We just, it's just Charleston's such a hot market for anybody in this field that it's a tough world. It has definitely helped it though. And that's, when everybody's fighting for employees, I'll take anything I can get. And so this has definitely been a huge win. It's got guys, it's kept people here that probably would have been gone, but now they realize hey, I'm part of something special. My life is getting better, and not just at Abel's Landscapes, but holistically.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Great to hear. So you bought the business from your dad 7 years ago. He left 5 years ago. And so you started off in the field, you're working in the field,
Right.
I think you told me, or I read that you took over the install division and then you had to become CEO. And so tell me about that transition.
Yeah. So like I said, I kind of grew up in the business. By the time I bought the company from my dad, I was I would say, I understood the technical side pretty well. I'd seen everything that by that point, was growing in it, understood it. But it was the first time running a business. And so I had also been a part of the business side of it for a long time and learning how to read, our P&L and all that, but had never been at the top. And so there was a lot to learn. And it really took I'm still growing. I feel like it's such a truth that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And that's just summed me up for the last 7 years. Grown a lot. But for a long time, I was still just in the field way too much. And so it felt like bringing somebody to run the install division was such a leap for us at the size we were. That's a high dollar position for our small company. And so I just kind of kept doing both at the expense of really the company's health, I'd say. I don't have any regrets necessarily, but if I had to do it over, I would go back and encourage myself to take that leap and get out of the field sooner.
Yeah.
So that I can begin looking at the forests and not just the individual trees.
Yeah. It's such it is the classic shift that any small business owner has to make.
Mm-hmm.
and I've met business owners that are in the field even larger than you, right? Much
Yeah.
larger. And then I've met some much smaller. They're already out of the field.
Mhm.
So such a key element, as I
Yeah.
was saying. Oh, go ahead.
It's a glass ceiling, and it was for me anyways. We're just under 7 million now. There's no way we could have really grow much more than this with me still in the field. Now there's some guys that just like it, and Charleston's a really temperate climate, and so there's a lot of days I'm looking out my window here and I'm like, man, I kind of like to get out there and be out there in the field and solving problems, and I really do enjoy that part. So that was part of it, just being disciplined enough to say, no, I got to delegate that out. We've got bigger fish to fry here. And then also part of it is just having the right person. And so when we hired our director of installation, which is what I was kind of co-leading, his name's Larry Padgett, and he's done a fantastic job. Came in with experience, and it's done a great job. And so that just gave me an comfort to delegate a lot more quickly, so that now that I can spend my time, looking at the whole company.
How'd you find him? It's such a key issue. The biggest, the most costly part of running a business that I see is when people make the wrong hires, and all the time and money that sucks up. And so finding the right hire to me is like seriously the most critical part of growth. How did you do it?
The short answer would be prayer. The long answer would be really just trying to be prudent with our interview process. And so I'll say this, it's been a little easier for us to find applicants for the higher positions, because it's got a higher wage and you just get more people clicking the link compared to crew member or even a crew leader position. So we had a fair amount of people coming through with the applications, and then it was down to interviewing them. And so we interviewed maybe 5 that we had kind of whittled it down to, and then the top 2 we interviewed twice. And so that, I think, wisdom comes in the multitude of many. And so we bring in different people for those interviews and get their take on it. And so we're secretly just kind of really getting a feel for how they would fit in our culture as much as their technical experience.
Sure.
For this position, experience was pretty necessary. We do so many things in our company outside, like I said, we're kind of like a general contractor outside the house. So if you got somebody who's just like really irrigation heavy or just pool heavy, it wouldn't be the best fit. So we need somebody who had been around for a while and seen it all. We needed somebody who was going to lead with integrity and be a good character fit. And so we whittled it down even further to 2. So Larry, who we hired, we probably interviewed 3 times. And every time we came away just feeling more and more comfortable with him. And at that point, you just got to say, okay, we're going to go for this. Another thing I would say is just not rushing into it. I would rather just keep it as it was than make a rash hire, like you said, because we have made bad hires before, and it's hard to reel that back in.
Yeah, the higher up in the company, the more careful you have to be.
For sure.
So excellent. And so obviously he's a technical fit and a cultural fit.
He is, absolutely. Yeah, he's been great. It's allowed me to sleep well at night, knowing that division is fully covered. I mentioned on the maintenance side, we had a woman named Missy Mosney who really built the whole maintenance side. So the first 15 years of me being here, I never really worried about that division. But when Missy moved, it was kind of that same thing. And again, I'll say it was just answer to prayer, but the guy we brought in, his name is Jason Crosby, to lead that was the exact cultural fit. One of those guys that I'd actually known him personally and tried to bring him over, but he was at a level where he was we didn't have anything equal at that point. So when Missy left, we did have something. And so he took that ball and really ran with it. So I've got 2 great guys. And so these last 2 years, it's just set the table for us to break through that glass ceiling and look at growth.
You must be really enjoying business right now.
Oh man, I am. I literally this week just stopped in the middle of what I was doing. It's like, this is great. Like, I don't know if it gets much better. I've got a super solid team. we're doing well, and it's not about, greed or how profitable we are. We're just like steadily improving in culture, our employees' lives, and the business. So I think just having that moment to enjoy in the moment where we are is really important.
I noticed that you indicated you had a couple of unique benefits, mental health coverage and profit sharing. You want to talk about those?
Yeah, I think, culture is such a buzzword, and benefits are part of that when you talk about how you're going to treat your employees. And so as we've grown, just like new things come to us. And so we did a survey this past spring, and I thought our culture was really just killing it. And overall, we have a great culture, but they pointed out some blind spots in that. And part of that was, not shocking, but people wanted some more PTO. People wanted more, better health coverage. And we are the classic small business where we just went over that 50 mark not too many years ago. And so we started at 50 and paying 50% of the employees. Now we're up to 60. And then this year we've just added mental health coverage. That came about really, we had a few cases just towards the end of last year where understanding some issues our people were going through, I just recognized that speaking with a counselor really would help them.
Yeah.
And so we just covered it for them because I didn't want the financial piece of it to be a burden. And so we just kind of, for those individuals, just paid for it. And then we started talking about, well, what would it look like if we just offered that to everybody? And so that's going live now. And we've partnered with a local practice here who can take on our people. And I think it's just such a huge part. In our company, we've got guys who would never really think about going to speak to a counselor, but we've got a lot. It's just becoming more commonplace that if your marriage is in shambles, that's going to come into work. If you've got, huge financial issues that are just like, or depression or whatever the issue is, that's going to affect your job performance. And so what better tool than we can give them is to pair them with somebody, a professional who can lead them through that.
Yeah.
That's one.
Before we go to the next one,
Sure.
Coincidentally, I was talking literally yesterday with I do strategic planning with companies, and we have a whole process that they do to prepare, and then they bring their leadership team here to New Orleans, and we meet for a couple of days, and we were literally talking about this because it was an issue with a couple different people in their company, and I told him, I've seen a few of my clients give this as a benefit, and so you're maybe the third or fourth company I've come across.
Yeah, I don't mind sharing the specifics of how we're doing it, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong because this is our first stab at it. We are going to offer, essentially, we'll pay for 10 sessions in a given year. The first one will be 100% covered by Abel's Landscapes. The second through 10th the employee would pay $25 a visit.
A copay.
A copay, essentially. We want them to have a little skin in the game.
Yeah.
And we also are going to, they're going to have, if it's marriage counseling, we'll cover that. That costs a little bit more to have two people in the session, but we'll cover that. All they pay is $25. And so a lot of it is, and that's speaking to the counselor, she thought 8 to 10 sessions, they can kind of get to, on average, a good spot. Yeah. And so we'll see.
So is it the same one counselor or is it a group?
It's a practice. So the owner is there's 3 counselors in the practice. And I don't think it's like once, now that's live, it's going to be like all of a sudden 20 or 30 people. I told her she might realize how crazy Abel's Landscapes really is once she goes through a year. But and
so probably your dream manager will be recommending that sometimes.
Yeah, it's just another tool in Morgan's bag to say, hey, well, I think really working through this issue, Morgan's not a licensed counselor. She ends up hearing a lot of that stuff, but she can direct them right to.
I think it's brave of you. It's such a big issue. And especially with COVID or the pandemic, the dislocations, financial insecurity and health insecurity. And so a lot of people
Yeah.
carry that baggage around, and a lot of owners do too, right?
Right. Absolutely. People are on edge since COVID. They just are. You just kind of feel it. And I'm not smart enough to know everything that goes into that, but hopefully I'm smart enough to recognize how to help and when to help. And so we've seen some of that stuff that you just mentioned. We've seen all of it here. People losing family members, health issues, emotional abuse. And so,
Yeah.
I think the old school way would just be like, hey, you leave that drama at home and come to work, you're coming to work.
Yeah.
And it's just, I look at it as an opportunity to like, okay, how much is it going to cost us at the end of the day to do this? Not a ton.
Really, you're spending and helping a few people who really need that help.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So
I think it'd be a win-win.
Whereas profit sharing, is probably a more of a, well, you tell us, how does that work in your company?
So profit sharing is one of those. It's been a double-edged sword for me, because for every year until this year, we've done it at Christmas time, and so no matter what, it's just felt like a Christmas bonus.
Right.
And that's because we haven't had the time or the bandwidth or the know-how to like really show the employees that here's how you're tied into profit. We talk about it, and every year I'm like, hey, we had a good year, so we're sharing this kind of profit. And that is somewhere where we still need to improve. But the one thing we did this year that was a little different is we did profit sharing twice. And so we did it in July and December instead of just being December. And so we kind of look at the first 6 months. We knew where we were and what we wanted to share. And then that just gave me an opportunity then to really just preach to all the employees and say, hey guys, this is why we can share it. Because we're making a profit. How do we make a profit? It's because of these things. And these are some of the things that take away from profit. When you have to come back to the shop for this, or you have to leave the job and go to Lowe's for the 4th time in a day. And just another opportunity for us to talk about those things.
So I hold an event every August called the Summer Growth Summit.
Mm-hmm.
And we go visit a landscape company, and it's a public event. And we did it this past year at Drost Landscape in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a meeting twice a month where they show how well they're doing, and they connect it to profit sharing. So they're meeting, frequently to make that connection.
Yeah. And that's something we wrestle with. I'd love to hear how they do it without giving everybody like a little financial class of how to read a P&L. It just seems a little overwhelming to, yes, we can show them what the net profit is. But how do I show them exactly how they contribute to that? It's something that we are growing in. We've got ideas. It gets complicated really quickly. And so we've tried a few things, and it gets challenging. So we've kind of reeled those back. And right now we're just trying to do it twice a year, but we want to get the more that we can show these guys how they correlate to the profit.
It's better for everybody in the company.
It is. Yeah.
So your work must be less seasonal than Michigan, because if you're in a highly seasonal climate as a consultant, I would be like, you can't do it mid-year.
Yeah.
So how do you do it?
We keep rolling all year here. So our maintenance accounts are weekly, and that goes through the winter. Our H2B employees, they're here from April through December. And so they get to partake in that as well. And it's, and so, they're, for that first one, they're only here for half of the first 6 months. So it's adjusted accordingly, but we keep everybody on in the winter. Charleston's just temperate enough where we can do that.
Yeah. Do you, do H2B care about the profit sharing?
They certainly do. And it's, especially for those guys, it's an area where they can elevate themselves. And we've got guys so we've had the same guys for 6 or 7 years for the most part. And it's amazing what they've learned.
Yeah.
you just take any facet of employees like that. We've got some that have like really bought 100% in. They've learned English. They've gotten their driver's licenses. A few of them have even turned into crew leaders while they're here. And then we have some that are just content to kind of be the guy in the crew, and that's fine. And so that profit sharing, we have those kind of little one-on-ones with them, and they understand where they want to grow or where we want them to grow, but they're rewarded accordingly based on what they're putting in.
And so do you do the dream manager with your H2B?
We do. Yep. And it works just the same way. They really bought into it as well. And, you know, some of them have several things going on back home in Mexico. They're building houses, or they've got a side business there. And so she's working with them. Like I said, Morgan speaks fluent Spanish, so she's a great candidate to be able to navigate that.
They always seem to be building a house back home. That sounds like a constant refrain.
Yeah, that's right. I got to go visit them someday when they finish it.
Yeah. So I have a client, a peer group member, and the guy I'm coaching actually, he's from Detroit, and I think he goes down every year to Mexico to visit his guys.
Yeah. Yeah. They've invited me several times. I need to take that trip one time.
So you were telling me, or, you know, in some of your notes to me, that part of your success has been by joining a local peer group. And that obviously caught my attention because that's what I do. I run landscape peer groups, but yours is a little different. Tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So when I was buying business from my dad, we used a financial advisor, my dad's financial advisor, and he knew of this group called C12 that was just getting started in Charleston. And it sounded right up my alley. So I joined that right at the same time, 7 years ago. So C12 is a business peer group. So you've got 12 people at the table, and they're all from, you know, non-competing industries. But their kind of differentiating factor is that it's faith-based. So it's a Christian-based peer group, and they don't try to hide that. It's just who they are. And their big mission is that they see business owners have a huge potential to change the world through ministry, just the way they take care of their employees, the customers, everybody they come into contact with. And so we meet once a month for most of a full day. And I've learned so much from that group. So many of these like business issues are universal. So we've got a veterinarian, we've got a physical therapist, an engineer, you name it, so, you know, tech guys, but so many of us are dealing with the same issues. And so there's time for us to dig into specific issues. There's content that's really well laid out. And then there's also something called an affinity group. And so if I wasn't part of C12, I would definitely be a part of yours, because I've just learned the value of being with peers. So through C12, I've got a group of other landscapers that we've met in different parts of the country, but it's on me to kind of keep up with them. And so there's 3 of us that we get together once or twice a year, same size businesses, same trajectory, and just picking each other's brains. But it's been such an encouraging group, because as a business owner, there's just a certain amount of weight that you carry that really only another business owner can understand and feel. And so having somebody you can text or email is invaluable.
So you run a faith-based company. It's not on your website, so it's not like I was kind of maybe it is, and I didn't see it, but
so it's there, but it's not like you know, it doesn't open to the Bible when you like click on our website. There's 2 things. At least I know in there. Our mission statement is to glorify God by connecting people to something beautiful. That's what wakes me up in the morning and gets me excited about what we do. And I really, you know, for me, and I get that not everybody's, you know, faith driven by their faith, but if you really believe in it, then how does it not impact like every aspect of your life, including work, where you spend most of your time? And so for me, making that switch to saying, okay, well, if I believe in this, then it's got to change the way I lead the company. And it's got to change the way I value my employees and the way I pay them, the way I treat them, the benefits we offer, everything. And so I've just continued to grow in that and have a long way to go. But it's been exciting to do it. So when I say our mission is to glorify God by connecting people to something beautiful, that's vague for a reason. We see something beautiful as really the relationships we have with our employees, the relationships we have with our customers, our vendors, and of course the landscape. I think there really is just like whether you can recognize it or not, when you go into a beautiful garden or into a green space, it's just like this deep breath moment where you're connecting with creation, in my opinion. And so for me, that's what we get to bring to people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our mission statement, why we get out of bed every day. And then our vision is to create a legacy of excellence by being faithful stewards of God's people, plants, and purpose. And so that's what we talk about that all the time here. Like, what do you want your great grandkids to know about Abel's Landscapes? Well, we want to be the best. We want to be known for doing the best work. But what does that mean? It means the best work in just landscape? No, not necessarily. We want to be known for being the best, like by the way we steward what we've been given. So our employees, our people, the work we do, and then, God's purpose. For me, again, this is all coming from my faith, which I understand that all of our employees share. And so I'm not cramming it down their throat. I just put it out there like that and say, hey, guys, this is what I believe. I want you to know it. The good thing for you is that it turns out that it is good business. The golden rule is great for you, whether you're a Christian or not. And so for me, the greatest two commandments are to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to I'm blanking on it. Sorry, I have to come back to that. But to love it, basically, if we are, that's it. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself are the two greatest commandments. And so if we're doing more of that in 2023 than we did in 2022, we're winning.
It's very poetic. You're working in the Garden of Eden every day.
That's right. It really is. It's the first job created. And so there's a lot of tie-ins there.
Although, was the first job gardening or being a zookeeper? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, that's just their first home was a garden.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So how does it, you said in your notes to me that you feel like it really manifests in positive ways. And you've already talked about a lot of them, I'm sure. Any additional ways that you see it manifest?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that does just shape our culture. And it's good business, I believe, when you're living kind of by some of these biblical standards. So just the way we talk to one another, we talk about this all the time. If you've been around, if you've been worked with a group of people who gossip a lot, it just brings a whole negative vibe to the company, to the crew. Same with people who complain. And so we're not naive enough to know that we don't have people who gossip or complain, but we talk to them all the time. Say, hey, if you got a problem with, so-and-so, go talk to them directly. If it doesn't get better, then you elevate it to your manager. But you don't go complaining over and over and over about this issue, or you don't go talking trash about somebody else. Those are small things that we talk about. I've also seen it really, God answer prayers with our managers and people he's brought to us. Every time we've lost somebody, it feels so scary. So Missy was here for like over 20 years. And when she told me she was moving with her husband up to another part of the state, it was like, what are we going to do? But I've seen it, that prayer answered. And every time we've had a position like that filled, we've grown from it because, Missy did it her way for 20 years, which was great, but it was the only way we knew. And so you bring somebody with a fresh eye that can only take that and improve it. It's really just helped us improve so much.
So my grandfather used to say that life would happen in 7-year cycles. He said he looked back on his life and he could kind of map it out in these changes that would happen every 7 years. And so you're coming on your next 7 years. What's your vision for your company in the next 7 years?
Yeah, so we have growth plans. I've never been super driven by the top line sales. And that comes from my dad, just being real conservative and not worrying about the top line as much as the bottom line. I think that can hurt you a little bit in that he came almost from a scarcity mindset of, it was also towards the end of his career. So he didn't have the ambition necessarily where he was trying to like grow.
Right.
But it can keep you like holding on to everything a little too tight. So I think it's wise to have a good growth plan. But for us, improving our bottom line is the most important over the next 7 years. I do think, and the Charleston market has been hot for the last 7 years. We're seeing it cool a little bit right now. It hasn't like turned off by any means. We still have a good backlog, but it's not like I think in 2 years, I'll look back at this period right now and be like, oh, that was a sweet spot, because it's not like frantic, crazy. How are we going to get to the next job in time? It's just a really good, steady pace for us right now.
Yeah.
But I think history would say over the next 7 years, we should expect, some decline. And so we need to be prepared for that. And so getting out of debt is a huge goal of ours. And so we're on pace to be completely debt free in 2 years.
So debt meaning debt from purchasing the company?
Debt from, so we've paid that off from purchasing the company. So I took 2 loans when I bought the company. One was for the property and one was for the purchase of the company. So we paid the company off. We still have a loan on the property.
Well, that's a solid collateral.
Yeah, it is. And then the rest of our debt is, we have a healthy debt to equity ratio, but it's just the trucks and the equipment that we have. When you're buying a $80,000 dump truck or $60,000 skid steer, it's hard to front that all with cash. But that's where we want to get to. So we're 2 years out from that. But
those are both collateralized, and if you believe in the concept of good debt versus bad debt, those are good debts.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd also say that like if we could do it with cash, then it's even better. And so,
but if you're going to keep growing, you're going to pay those off, but you're still going to get more equipment.
Yep. And so that's why we're setting aside money right now. We're saving in two chunks. One is we're paying debt off more aggressively, and one we're putting into a fund to purchase equipment. So that like right now, what it looks like, instead of us buying, let's just say it's a maintenance truck, an F-150 or something that's costs, I don't know, $26,000. So maybe now we're putting down half cash and financing the rest. But we'd like to get to the point where we can just pay cash straight out.
There's 2 schools of thought on that. And so some would say only cash, right? If you could. And then others would say, if you can collateralize it, save your cash for more important things, emergencies or acquisitions and opportunities, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And again, that's where I'm growing. Either way, I know we'll be healthier with less debt. And so, but when you talk about growth, we've considered acquisitions in the past, and that just seems like so ambitious for us right now, because our niche is so custom and high end that to find the right fit, we think, our plans right now are to stay in Charleston for the most part. Now, Charleston, we could have different branches within Charleston, but who's to say our vision doesn't change in a few years where we're looking at other cities around. At that point, we'd have to have some serious collateral to make those moves.
I've never seen your place. I've never even asked you about it, but let me ask you, how big can you grow in this property that you bought from your dad?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have averaged, including 2022, 20% growth for the last 6 years, except for 2020. 2020, we had the demand. We did not get our H2B guys. And so we just didn't have the guys in the field to keep up that same pace. So you take that year out of it, we've averaged 20%. I don't think it'll stay 20% necessarily, with some maybe dip coming in the next few years, but 15 to 20, I think we can do. Our site here is a good one. We're on 4.5 acres. but we will outgrow that at some point. And really, it's not necessarily the growth of our current shop, it's our location. And so, for those of you who aren't familiar with Charleston, we are way south in Charleston. A lot of the work we do is in Mount Pleasant, which is a 45-minute drive for us. Kiowa Island's a 45-minute drive. And so having a satellite in those areas, or closer to those areas, makes a lot of sense to eliminate drive time.
So are you in Charleston proper?
We are just south, like 5 minutes south of Charleston proper, where it's a small town called Hollywood, which gets a little more rural, but it's a lot more affordable for the land that we have, and it's a pretty easy drive.
Kiowa is sort of north over a bridge or two, and
everything's over a bridge down here, just with the rivers. So yeah, Kiowa's not that far. You just there's only one road in and one road out, and so it's 45 minutes. And then downtown's 30 minutes. Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, all those areas where we work are probably in that 45 minutes to an hour range. You throw a wreck in there on one of those bridges, and then it gets a lot worse. But try not to lose sleep on those days.
So before you got on, you said you're a surfer. Is that you're the surfer, or your kids are surfers, or?
Yeah, so I grew up here in Charleston and got hooked on surfing in high school. And so that's just kind of been my thing. And so really, it's been so fun to have my kids join me in that. The last few years, they're getting strong enough to paddle out and do the surf competition. So, when you're a surfer, you tend to turn every vacation into a surf trip. And so we've gone to Costa Rica the last few years. I usually go once with the guys trip, and we literally surf every hour of the day. And then when I take the family, it's less surfing, but it's still a lot of fun to get them to experience it. So yeah, we're heading to Nicaragua in March for a week with the guys. So I need to have a trip out there. It gets me excited. Something to look forward to.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
So I could imagine, like, I would have been equally not unsurprised if you had said you're a golfer, and I can imagine you're either a golfer or a surfer.
That's right. Exactly right. And it would not be prudent of me if I want to stay married to do both. So I've chose surfing. I lose my religion quickly on the golf course. We live on a golf course, and I don't really play very often at all. And Charleston has a ton of great golf. It's just one of those things that takes a lot of time to get good, time and money, and I'd rather surf when I can.
So sort of a final thought here. Give us some predictions for the future in the landscape industry from your perspective.
Sure. I am no Nostradamus. I think just based on the economy, we've had a little mild recession here. It's just been too good for too long that we shouldn't be surprised by some sort of downturn in the next 5 years. And so how are your books going to look when that does come? And just understanding your business really well, so you can see those indicators coming, measuring your backlog, whatever your KPIs are. You just need to have a really good, nobody wants to let employees go, but you're going to get yourself in a world of hurt if you keep people on for too long and then out payroll yourself. So I would, the Charleston market is one of those, there's lots of them in America, but Charleston market's just been pretty hot, and we're fairly cushioned from the overall economy. When it went down in 08, 09, it hit us later, and we came out of it earlier, just because Charleston still, property values are cheaper here than they are up in New York or California. So you've got people fleeing those states coming down here. So we expect it not to get too catastrophically bad, but we're just keeping our eye on it, at least. We think 2023 will be pretty close to 2022 for us. We expect to grow, just not like our tails are on fire or anything. I think when you look at technology, we pay attention to technology a lot. In our company, we do really high-end residential. And so when you talk about robotic mowers and things like that, we see that as a possibility for a few of our customers, but not the majority. And it's just because we don't have huge lawns here. So it's not like you just set the thing out and it's doing its thing. And people want it just so like customly perfect. They want it done once. And So we're watching that. We have definitely seen battery operated equipment. I think that'll be in the very short future where everything we have as far as like blowers and edgers and anything handheld will be battery operated. We try not to be like the first ones on that cutting edge technology. We like to let them get the kinks out, but we've begun moving everything to battery that we can.
Yeah.
And I think we're only going to see in the near future that our services are going to be, I think really, as the population is aging, having people who can do manual labor is only become more valuable. And so I think the demand will stay there for the landscape industry, even with a tough economy. We just have to really recruit well. And holding on to your people, I think it's just going to be a larger demand for anything construction related, hospitality, any kind of that manual labor is going to be tough. And so you better have a good culture. You better be paying your people well, because the demand is going to continue to increase, I believe.
Yeah, especially like you said, you've positioned your company as a general contractor, so you have demand coming from so many different areas.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you think, one thing I just want to ask about, clearly, a lot of people grow up in Charleston, but a lot of people are moving around Charleston and retiring, and baby boomers are still in the middle of retiring. Right. So do you see that slowing down for you?
We do not. I think Charleston is just as many. So I've been doing it for 20 years in Charleston, and there are some streets where you feel like you've hit every house on the street, but there's so many areas where like, man, we don't even have a footprint in this neighborhood, or we've only done a very few. People are buying homes here, and most of what we do is it's not new construction. It's somebody buys a house and they'll gut the entire house to do a remodel, and we'll gut the entire landscape to do a remodel. And so that's a lot of what we do. And there's enough homes all over Charleston that will continue to do that. A lot of these landscapes of, 20 or 30 years old and need a revamp. So
that's exactly my house. I bought it from a woman who gutted it after Katrina devastated it. She totally redid it. We moved in and complete front and backyard, and so there's a big need for that. I can see that.
Right. Same with my house. It was built in the 90s, and when we bought it, it was just it was time. The landscape hadn't been maintained super well, so kind of gutted it and did the front once, and then the back a few years later.
Mark, this has been great. I really appreciate you sharing inside stories and your ways of running your business. I think a lot of new and interesting ideas here for people to think about. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Jeffrey. It was great to speak with you.
Thank you.
Sure.